TJ Pittenger here with us to talk Clemson, Florida State, and the Big 12. One of these things is not like the other. And I wouldn't have made the case a week ago, right, that there was any chance for a relationship between those three entities. But then Dennis Dodd, who is at CBS Sports, those are three big letters, puts in this emergency scenario where those two schools land in the Big 12. And while that sounds asinine to me, when you read that or you hear that, TJ, what comes to mind for you?
That if Florida State and Clemson are doing all this and paying the attorney fees and making this stink and putting themselves in a very negative light in the court of public opinion and fighting this battle to, no offense to the Big 12, to wind up in essentially the same position that they're in right now monetarily with the ACC, but then worse because you got to travel to play all those Big 12 teams and not play all the schools in your backyard, then heads need to roll at Florida State and Clemson. And I am very close with Florida State's AD. I've got pictures of him holding my kid. We're close. But if that's the case, then we need to look for a new AD at Florida State. And Clemson needs to do the same thing as well. And so I'm willing to say that because I don't think that's what ends up happening. But yeah, now the Big 12 has some built-in advantages. I get that. And most of it is stability because it does look like they're going to stand around for a while and not be the ACC that craters. So I will give that. That would be the one better situation that you'd be in by being in the Big 12 as compared to being in the ACC, which does look like it's going to crumble. However, that's not worth it. That is not, because you could have just stayed in the ACC and kept that conference going by Florida State and Clemson existing there. And maybe you go pull a USF or you pull some teams that can one day be at that level. They wouldn't be anywhere close now, but why would you do all of this, lose all the money to basically end up in the same spot you were in before? So yeah, I don't buy that at all. If that happens again, there need to be pretty massive changes at both universities.
TJ, the only thing that I could see here that makes me think, all right, I understand how Clemson is being overvalued is 15 years ago. I bring this up on every show. 15 years ago, from a revenue standpoint, Bowling Green brought in more football revenue than Clemson. No one really cared about that brand or entity. They won to create the brand. They won a couple of national championships. They were a mainstay in the college football playoff. That created what Clemson is today. Go back to 2005, and Miami had, in essence, what Clemson has today. That brand that has been there on the national stage, that in the last 2 decades has dissipated for the Hurricanes. That's why you hear mutterings of them coming to the Big 12, not having the prowess for the SEC or the Big 10. For a Clemson, is that going to be part of this? The idea that in 20 years, that brand might not be as powerful if they don't keep winning. Like Nebraska can stop winning and still be Nebraska. Does Clemson have that kind of sway to woo the SEC or Big 10?
Yeah, I don't know if they have as much like cachet as Nebraska does, but I think they do. And, even as a Florida State guy, like Clemson's donor support and really what they've built that brand into being, really only being 2 hours from Atlanta, hour and a half, maybe, is super helpful. They recruit in the most fertile territory in all of college football there in the South Georgia area. And then they come down into Florida and do a really good job here too. Their donor support, they have a larger donor support and more people giving annually than Florida State does. They did a great job with their IPATE, which I pay $10, everyone pays $10, and you're part of the booster membership, and then they've done a good job excelling it from there. I think the leadership is in the right place. I think that where that brand is right now is in a really good place, and I think there's a chance that it could fall off, but I think we will eventually get to a model, and this may open up a whole nother can of worms, to where I don't think relegation would be quite what college football would ever go to, but I do think there would be almost like a salary cap where there's a floor and you have to invest this much into your sports to be good. And if you refuse to invest this much in your sports, we're not going to take you into the big 2 leagues or whatever league that is. And I think as long as Clemson, all that say, if Clemson just keeps investing like they are, they'll continue to be a pretty strong brand. I think based on where they recruit, based on what they've done recently, as long long as they don't make some terrible hires year after year after year, they should be fine. But you even look at programs that make terrible hires year after year after year. I mean, we're in Florida. Look at UF and look at Miami. All it takes is one good hire and that UF brand is back or that Miami brand is back. And so I don't know. I think Clemson will stick around. It would be my kind of gut, my leaning on that in 20 years. To really tie all together what you just said with the whole, hey, can you afford to be an elite college football program? That's what Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, wants. Let's create this almost super league of teams that can afford to be in the super league moving forward, who make their own rules. That's the NCAA president is the one who wants that, though you could argue he's grasping at straws to keep everybody happy in an age where nobody is happy. But when it comes to Florida State Clemson, I know we mentioned the whole Big 12 thing, the Dennis Dodd thing. Kind of his point there was that ESPN could take those two properties and say we could make more money from you in the Big 12 or creating 3 super leagues. Does that make any sense in your brain? Because I'm not sure if that registers for mine. Yeah, I don't think Florida State and Clemson, as much as I am an ACC guy, right, or whatever, a Florida State guy, I don't know if they have enough. I mean, that wouldn't create a Big 3 to me, right? I mean, look at where the ACC is. They're already so far behind. And I'll say the Big 12 is much more competitively balanced and has a lot more, like, you've got, to me in the ACC, you've got Florida State and Clemson, and then, then kind of some, North Carolina, Virginia, Miami. Maybe North Carolina can bump up into that top one. But then, past that, I mean, I don't think you're working with very much. I think you're working with teams that might fit into the Big 12. And the Big 12 already has, like, outside of the brand power of Florida State, Clemson, maybe UNC, maybe Miami. I think the Big 12 has a better roster down the chart, but I don't think it's like worlds better from a TV revenue standpoint, from a media rights standpoint. I think they're pretty, both conferences are pretty on par, especially when you factor in Florida State kind of having the cachet and the Florida and Clemson being at the top there as well. And so I think both conferences are similar. So I don't know that adding Florida State and Clemson makes the Big 12 anywhere near what the SEC and the Big 10 have. To me, it's still it helps the conference, but it doesn't bring it up to par at all.
Not a direct comparison, but it's certainly not direct. But if you add Florida State and Clemson to the Big 12, you get the Big 12 with Texas and Oklahoma, which you just had, which was still behind the SEC and the Big 10. I mean, that to me is what it creates, which is not necessarily a third super league, because you've still got that gap between the major conferences and where the Big 12 is. But how can we close that gap then with other ACC entities like an NC State, a Louisville, a Pitt, maybe even if we're lucky in Miami? Let's talk about that next on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. If you like fire and TVs, don't put them together in the literal sense, but do it with Fire TV. Amazon.com/Locked On Fire TV specifically. So you can go there and you can watch Locked On. All your favorite destinations, sports, live games, highlights, in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers you just this little thing. You can plug it into your TV and then bam, Fire TV, live TV. Or you can buy the actual Fire TV itself. They recently created Fire TV channels, deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, and it's free. It's free. It includes all of us here at Locked On, as well as the pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the games, analysis, highlights, more on the NBA, March Madness, MLB, not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, everything you need at Fire TV. The channels are spectacular. It connects to your Alexa. It's convenient. And right now at Amazon.com/Locked On Fire TV, you can find out more. Trust me on this one. Amazon.com/Locked On Fire TV.